They're all gone now. My mother-in-law's voice sank through the phone, dripping with satisfaction. I got great deals for my friends at the club. You should thank me for handling it all while you were away. I gripped my coffee mug tighter, staring out at the Mediterranean from my hotel balcony in Greece. The research fellowship I'd been awarded was supposed to be my chance to continue my father's marine biology work. Instead, here I was listening to Patricia brag about selling off my inheritance. The boats were just sitting there collecting dust, she continued, clearly enjoying herself. 8 luxury vessels. It was wasteful. At least now they'll be used properly. My name is Olivia Morgan, and at 34, I just learned that my mother-in-law had sold my father's prized collection of boats, vessels he'd spent his life restoring and using for his groundbreaking marine research. Each one was specially equipped with custom research equipment he'd designed himself. Did you get the paperwork sorted? I asked calmly, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. The question seemed to catch her off guard. Paperwork? Oh, don't worry about all that. Cash deals are so much simpler, Patricia laughed. Your father was always obsessed with documentation and permits. Such a waste of time. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Thanks for letting me know, Patricia. I need to go now. Early meeting tomorrow. That's it, she asked, disappointed by my lack of reaction. You're not upset. These boats were worth millions, and now they're gone. Just like that. Just like that, I echoed, ending the call before she could respond. I immediately dialed another number, one I'd memorized years ago. Harbor Master Stevens, it's Olivia Morgan. Has anyone tried to move my father's boats? Mrs. Morgan. I was just about to call you, his familiar voice replied. Some people showed up this morning with cash, claiming they bought the vessels. I told them they needed proper transfer documentation and registration papers. They weren't too happy about that. Perfect, I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. And the security measures we put in place. All active. Nobody can move those boats without your electronic authorization and the proper codes. Your father made sure of that before he passed. He paused. Should I be worried about these people? No, I replied, but please keep the cameras running. I have a feeling they'll be back. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and clicked on a bookmark labeled Morgan Fleet Security. 8 live video feeds appeared, showing each of my father's boats safely docked in their spots. The security system he'd installed before his death was state-of-the-art, designed to protect not just the vessels but the valuable research equipment on board. My father, Dr. James Morgan, hadn't just been a marine biologist. He'd been a pioneer in ocean conservation. Each boat in his fleet served a specific purpose in his research, equipped with custom technology he'd developed. The collection was worth millions, but their true value lay in the scientific potential they represented. Patricia had never understood that. To her, they were just status symbols, toys that could be sold to her country club friends for quick cash. She'd never forgiven my father for leaving everything to me instead of her son, my husband Michael. The boats need to stay in the family, Dad had told me before he died, but they need to stay with someone who understands their purpose. Your work, your passion. It's exactly what I've always fought for. Promise me you'll continue the research. I promised, and I meant it. That's why I'd taken the fellowship in Greece, studying the same Mediterranean coral reefs he'd worked to protect. What I hadn't expected was for Patricia to make her move while I was away. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Mom just called me, furious. Says you've got some kind of high-tech security on the boats. Why didn't you tell me? I sighed. Michael was a good man, but he'd always struggled to stand up to his mother. He worked in finance, far removed from the world of marine biology that his father-in-law and I shared. Patricia had used that distance to her advantage, constantly whispering about how I was wasting the boats, how they could be sold to fund more practical ventures. Because your mother has been trying to sell them since Dad died, I typed back. The security system was his idea, not mine. Check your email, I sent you the footage from today. Minutes later, my phone rang. Oh God, Michael's voice was shaky. Is that my mother trying to break into the cabin of the research vessel? Yes, I replied. And that's your mother's friend Linda attempting to hotwire the Phoenix. But she told me you'd agreed to sell them. She said you'd signed papers. There are no papers, Michael, she lied. She sold boats she had no right to sell, took money she had no right to take. I kept my voice gentle. This wasn't his fault, but he needed to understand the gravity of the situation. "What are you going to do?" he asked quietly. "Nothing yet," I said. "The boats are safe, and thanks to Dad's foresight, they can't be moved without my authorization. But your mother's friends just paid cash for stolen property. They might want to rethink that decision." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with another call. Patricia again. I let it go to voicemail, already knowing what it would say. She'd be angry, threatening, probably trying to paint me as the villain who'd tricked her friends out of their money. But I had something she didn't: truth, documentation, and a promise to keep. The boats weren't just vessels. They were my father's legacy, tools for understanding and protecting our oceans. And I wasn't about to let them become playthings for Patricia's country club friends. I pulled up the security footage again, watching Patricia's frustrated attempts to access the boats. She had no idea that every failed attempt, every angry outburst, was being recorded. She thought she was dealing with her naive daughter-in-law, the scientist too absorbed in her research to notice what was happening back home. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. I opened my email and began to compose a message to my father's lawyer, attaching the security footage. The harbor master had already documented the attempted theft, and Patricia's phone call had been recorded through my hotel room system, another security measure my father had insisted upon. "Time to show them what happens when you mess with a Morgan," I whispered, hitting send. The real battle was just beginning. The next morning, my phone was flooded with messages. Patricia's friends from the country club were panicking, demanding their money back. Each voicemail was more desperate than the last, filled with threats of legal action and social ostracism. I forwarded them all to my lawyer, adding to the growing pile of evidence. "Mrs. Morgan, Harbor Master Stevens called just as I was preparing for my research dive. You need to see this. Your mother-in-law is here with the police." I switched to the live security feed on my laptop. There was Patricia, designer handbag swinging wildly as she gestured at the boats, two uncomfortable-looking officers beside her. Her face was red with fury as she pointed at each vessel in turn. "Those are the boats my friends purchased." Her voice came clearly through the security system's audio. "This is theft. She's stealing from us." "Ma'am," one officer replied, clearly tired of the conversation, "we've checked the documentation. These vessels are registered to Dr. Olivia Morgan. There's no record of any legal sale. But I have witnesses. My friends all paid cash." "Which would make this an attempted purchase of stolen property," the officer said firmly. "Would your friends like to file statements about paying cash for boats they knew weren't yours to sell?" Patricia's face went from red to white. That's not. They were just sitting here." I watched as the officers explained the situation to her. How attempting to sell property she didn't own was fraud, how accepting payment for said property was theft, and how the security footage of her attempted break-ins could lead to additional charges. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Mom just called me crying. Says you're having her arrested?" "I'm not having anyone arrested," I replied. "She tried to sell stolen property and got caught. The police are just explaining the consequences of her actions. She says she was just trying to help, that the boats were going to waste." I closed my eyes, counting to 10. Michael, she sold 8 boats worth millions of dollars to her friends for a fraction of their value, without any legal right to do so. That's not helping, that's theft. There was a long pause before his next message. I found the cash in her house. Over $800,000. She was going to surprise me with it, said it could help start my own investment firm. My heart broke a little for my husband. Patricia had always known exactly how to manipulate him, dangling his dreams just out of reach, using them to justify her actions. "The boats aren't just assets, Michael. They're research vessels, Dad's life work, our future." "I know," he replied after a moment. "I'm sorry. I should have seen what she was doing." The harbor master's voice interrupted my response. "Mrs. Morgan, your mother-in-law is demanding to speak with you. She's quite insistent." I switched back to the security feed. Patricia was now sitting in the harbor master's office, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to let her stew in the consequences of her actions. But I knew this conversation needed to happen. "Put her on," I said. "Olivia." Patricia's voice was sugary sweet, all traces of her earlier smugness gone. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I was only trying to help. Those boats just sitting there. all that potential money going to waste. Those boats I cut in are actively used for marine research. They're equipped with millions of dollars worth of custom scientific equipment. They're not toys for your friends to play with. But surely we can work something out. The money. The money you collected from your friends for stolen property? I interrupted. The money you were going to use to manipulate Michael. That money needs to be returned, Patricia. All of it. You're just like your father, she spat, her sweet facade cracking. So self-righteous with your science and your research. Do you know what people say about you? The ice queen who cares more about fish than family. I thought about my father then, how he taught me to swim before I could walk. How he'd shown me that protecting our oceans meant protecting our future. How he'd known Patricia would try something like this and had prepared accordingly. You're right about one thing, I said calmly. I am like my father, which means I'm not going to let you destroy his legacy. I'll tell everyone what you've done, she threatened. How you tricked my friends, embarrassed them. Go ahead, I replied. Tell them how you sold property that wasn't yours. Tell them how you tried to break into the boats when you couldn't access them legally. Tell them how you were going to use their money to bribe your son. I'm sure they'll be very understanding. The security feed showed Patricia's face crumpling as the reality of her situation sank in. Her friends had paid cash, large sums of it, for boats they couldn't access. Boats she had no right to sell. The scandal would destroy her carefully cultivated social status. What do you want? She whispered. I want you to return every penny to your friends. I want you to admit what you tried to do. And I want you to stay away from the boats, permanently. And if I don't, then I'll press charges. The security footage, the recorded phone calls, the attempted break-ins, it's all documented. Your choice. The harbor master's voice came back on the line. She's leaving now, Mrs. Morgan. Want me to send you the footage of her exit? No need, I said, watching through the feed as Patricia stormed out, her designer heels clicking angrily on the dock. Just make sure everyone knows those boats aren't for sale. Not now, not ever. My phone buzzed again. Michael. I just talked to Mom. She's furious, says you're ruining her life. There was a pause before his next message. I told her she ruined it herself. Pride and relief flooded through me. Maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this. I'd like to learn, he continued. About the research, the boats, what Dad was trying to achieve. If you'll teach me. I smiled, looking out at the Mediterranean waves. I'd like that, I replied. We can start when I get back. The harbor master's final message of the day came just as I was preparing for bed. Your mother-in-law's friends have been calling. They all want their money back. Seems they're not too happy about being involved in attempted theft. I could imagine the chaos unfolding at the country club. Patricia's carefully constructed world crumbling as her friends realized they'd been duped. But that was her problem to solve, not mine. My father had trusted me with his legacy, and I had protected it. Tomorrow I would dive back into my research, continuing the work he'd started. And maybe, just maybe, I'd helped Michael break free from his mother's manipulation in the process. The boats would stay where they belonged, serving science, not status. Just as Dad had intended. 6 months after Patricia's attempted boat heist, I stood on the deck of the Phoenix, watching Michael adjust his diving gear. True to his word, he'd thrown himself into learning about our marine research program, spending every weekend mastering the basics of marine biology and boat operation. Remember, I called out, we're just cataloging the new coral growth today. No fancy maneuvers. He gave me a thumbs up, his excitement visible even through the diving mask. It was a far cry from the corporate banker who'd once dismissed his father-in-law's work as expensive hobby research. The scandal at the country club had played out exactly as expected. Patricia's friends had demanded their money back, threatening legal action when they realized they'd been tricked into attempting to purchase stolen property. The social fallout had been swift and merciless. Mrs. Morgan. Harbor Master Stevens approached, clipboard in hand. The new security upgrades are complete on all 8 vessels, and you'll be pleased to know that Mrs. Wallace hasn't attempted to access the marina since the restraining order. Patricia had made one final desperate attempt to reclaim the boats 3 months ago, showing up drunk at midnight with a set of copied keys. The security cameras caught everything, and this time, her actions had consequences. How's the equipment calibration coming along? I asked, checking the research monitors we'd installed last week. Perfect, he replied. Your father would be proud to see how you've expanded his work. The marine conservation community can't stop talking about your recent findings." He was right. The specialized equipment on these boats had helped us document unprecedented changes in Mediterranean coral populations. We just received another research grant, larger than anything my father had dreamed of. My phone buzzed. A message from Linda, one of Patricia's former friends. "Olivia, I wanted to apologize again for my part in the boat situation. Patricia convinced us we were helping the family. I should have known better." The apologies had started rolling in once the truth spread through their social circle. Many of Patricia's friends had discovered they weren't the only ones she manipulated over the years. "Ready?" Michael called, adjusting his oxygen tank. "Almost," I replied, double-checking his equipment. This would be his first official research dive, helping document the coral restoration project we'd started 3 months ago. As we prepared to descend, I thought about how much had changed. Patricia had been forced to move to Arizona after the scandal, her social standing in shambles. She still sent occasional emails, alternating between anger and attempts at reconciliation, but Michael had finally learned to set boundaries. "I can't believe I never understood what Dad was trying to achieve here," he said as we surfaced an hour later, his face glowing with excitement. "All those years, Mom kept saying he was wasting his fortune on these boats, but look at what they can do." The research vessels had become our bridge, not just to continuing my father's work, but to healing our family. Michael had discovered a passion for marine conservation that matched my own, and our marriage was stronger than ever. "Your father knew exactly what he was doing," I said, helping him back aboard. "Both with the boats and with the security measures. He knew someone would try to take them eventually." "He knew my mother would try," Michael corrected, pulling off his diving mask. I found his old journals in the Phoenix's cabin. He documented everything: her attempts to convince him to sell, her complaints about the money spent on research equipment, even her threats to contest the will. I nodded, remembering my father's careful preparations. That's why he made sure everything was legally airtight. He knew the boats needed to be protected, not just from theft, but from people who couldn't see their true value. The harbor master approached with fresh towels and hot coffee. "The afternoon's data looks excellent," he reported. "The new coral beds are showing significant growth. Dr. Morgan would have loved to see this." Looking out over the fleet, 8 vessels dedicated to understanding and protecting our oceans, I felt my father's presence stronger than ever. Patricia had seen only the monetary value, the status symbols she could sell to her friends. She'd never understood that these boats were never meant to be sold. They were meant to make a difference. "Next week we'll start training the new research team," I told Michael as we packed up our gear. "Dad always wanted these boats to support a whole community of marine scientists. Now they finally will." He smiled, looking more like his true self than he had in years. "Mom called again yesterday," he said quietly. "Wanted to know if we'd reconsider letting her friends lease the boats for their summer vacations. Said it would help restore her reputation." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her that some things aren't for sale, that Dad's legacy deserves better than that." He paused, watching the sunset reflect off the water. "That I'm finally becoming the person he always hoped I'd be." I squeezed his hand, feeling grateful for how things had turned out. Patricia's attempt to steal our boats had backfired spectacularly, but it had given us something unexpected: a stronger family, a clearer purpose, and a deeper appreciation for my father's wisdom. As we headed home that evening, the 8 boats bobbed gently in their slips, their security systems quietly standing guard. They weren't just vessels anymore. They were proof that sometimes protecting what matters means standing your ground, even against family, especially against family. Dad had known that all along. Now we did too.